Here's an example of this. Again, this is Japanese ukiyo-e, really wonderful print with such an unusual perspective, right? And so we can see that here's more or less the middle of the print, but the horizon is dropped lower, right? And even lower still is this river. And our viewer is not looking up over the irises, but is looking through them. And actually the point, they're in the foreground, right? So they're using that foreground to give you the sense of intruding on these lovers who are the real focal point or point of interest in the narrative of this print. But we are made to feel like voyeurs, right? Like we're looking at something we're not supposed to through this framing device. And of course they are in the middle ground, and then our background is this wonderful sunset. Okay, this is a Hiroshige print, Japanese ukiyo-e. And what's really interesting here is the way that there's not, I mean, it's some very simple elements that are repeated. An example of using repeated forms and implied lines to make something very interesting. So we have these characters, these guys, struggling up or down this hillside in the pelting rain, the driving rain. And we can see the rain is bending the trees back, right? And we have these rows of trees that are setting up these implied lines, these repeating implied lines that intersect in this at an angle, setting up a herringbone with the implied lines established by the hill and the road, right? Then we have these repeated yellow colors, right? And even these repeated shapes over here. So very simple elements, but used in a very sophisticated way to really convey this feeling of the storm, right? And make something visually interesting. So let's look at some games. So here is a shot from Assassin's Creed. And what we're doing, what you can see, I'm sure you guys can see, this is a very balanced, symmetrical type of setup. So you're out on a balcony looking down, and there's some NPCs interacting down here. We have this window that is in the center, and even the center of it is in the center, and then architecturally everything is leading back towards it. Now I can't really, in this balcony, that's kind of what I see. I can't walk over here to, you know, so this is really my shot. So again, gives you that sense of grandeur, right? This is a big imposing building, but it's bringing my eye to this scene where there is some interaction happening. Here's a framing device, right? So we're in a building, something has knocked a hole in the wall, and we have, again, these frames are often dark because we're in this dark area looking out into something lighter. So it's, again, this very dramatic effect. So, and this is our first sight of the city. So when you get out there, you see this city, everything's very dark, but out there is the world of exploration and that light and openness and where you want to go. Okay, more from Assassin's Creed. So here we are looking at a scene, and this is from the player's perspective. So you think, wow, there's a bunch of buildings up there, and how do I make sense of this scene? Well, first of all, notice that you'll notice there's a little path here. Again, you can't see exactly where that path goes. It curves around. It leads you, you know you've got to go forward, and it's intriguing because you can't figure out exactly where it's going to go. You don't really know what's going to happen on the other side or on that path. We have these different levels, right? So here we have some lines repeated, horizontals that are leading us up here. And then when we get up here, we have these shapes of these buildings, castles and towers that are setting up this circle. So visually, your eye kind of goes from here, maybe around this way, or even maybe around this way. But it keeps moving you through the way that, because it's the way it's constructed. Basically, we've got a diagonal taking us up here. We've got a diagonal taking us up here. Then we're going to come right back down here, and then it starts all over again. Very powerful for keeping you focused into an area. Also, of course, the size is a little bit intimidating. You're not sure what you're going to get up to when you get to the top, but you're pretty sure it's going to be some fighting or something like that. It's some challenges you're going to have to overcome. All right, one last thing I want to talk about is this idea of negative space. This is the great wave of, I can never say that name, off Kanagawa. Sorry, I always forget that name. By Hokusai again. And it's really famous for its use of negative space. So again, we have these curves, we have this great wave that's coming down, we have this implied thing that's going to happen here, it's going to crash down, we've got these poor boats being tossed around, and we have Mount Fuji in the background. But what is really interesting is that if you don't look at the wave, the space that's created from the environment that's not the wave exactly mirrors it. So it's almost like a yin-yang sort of thing that's happening. So that's negative space. Negative space forms the shape of this wave in reverse, but helps simplify and draw our attention to what's the most important thing, which is the object here. So negative space is really important because it's important to remember, don't clutter everything if you don't have to. Sometimes putting nothing or putting less in a scene is actually more powerful. And with that, I want to direct you to a really great GDC Vault talk. That's our video for the week. There's no discussion on it, but it's a really amazing talk from an epic artist who talks about negative space on game maps for level design. So really interesting talk, and I strongly encourage you guys to see it. Okay, so just a couple more terms on this page for this lecture, which you guys can go through yourself. They're in the reading. There's a link that will show you what all these terms are. And again, all of these things, you want to use all of these tools, things that are interesting in your environments, not all at the same time, but pick some that you think will work for what you want to say in your environment, and see what happens.